Seches Brachas Daf Lamed Tes. Tosfos brings from Yerushalmi that says that if someone eats a beria, that means a complete min, even if it's less than the kazayis, he has to make a bracha achroina as if he would have ate a whole kazayis. Tosfos and the Rosh is mesupik if the Bavli over here argues on the Yerushalmi, and it's brought down the halacha. Therefore, you should be careful not to eat it without a mahalach how to make a bracha achrona. Kipshuta, this halacha is the same halacha that we find the gabi other halachas that a berry is choshev. We find the gabi malchus, you get malchus on the berry even if it's less than shigazayis, and we find that a berry is choshev and it's not bottle. However, the Sefer Shalmi Nisin brings an arichas many rayas that it's choluk this halacha of beria the gabi birchas hanenin from the other halachas. He says there's a number of kashas you could ask on the sugya. Over here, the shitas harash is that you don't have to eat the pit. As long as you eat the fruit, even without the pit inside, it's considered a burial. Other Rishonim argue on the Rosh. But according to the Rosh, it's tzarichian. The Tosfos says in Chulin, the gabi burial and other halachas, you have to eat the entire item. The gidim and that tzomas and the bones, they have to be eaten as well. So my shna over here that we're saying that you don't have to eat the pits inside. Another kasha, that vazes, that over here it's mavur in the Yerushalmi, that even like a small little piece of a rimain, as long as it's its own section, it's a beria. And however, legabe other halachas, you don't find that if someone eats a tiny piece of a rimain of orlo, he gets malchus. Another kasha, the Magen Gebayir mass, that it should be that a tiny piece of a rimain is not bottle b'roiv, and we don't find that. We find rimaini badon is not bottle b'roiv. You don't find the gabi other halacha such a thing. Another tzarchian is that Tosfos and the Rosh are mesupik if the Bavli argues in the Yerushalmi about this halacha, and it's tzarchian. Why should the Bavli disagree? It's a regular halacha all over that a berry is choshev. So the Shalmi Nisin says, and that's in the Yisayda Dvarim, it's mavur in the Magen Gebayim, that you see that it's choluk be'iki yisoidinam, our Gemara over here, and the sugya and kol terikul of a beria. Over here, a beria is be'etzem, even a mashu, you mechayiv birchas hanenin, you unenem el mahazeh, it's mechayiv a bracha. It's just a din, you need a chashivas of a kazayis. It's a side din, you need a chashivas of a kazayis. It's not in the etzem chefts of the shem achila. So meila, b'chay gavno, even just eating the fruit without the pit is enough to make it into a beria, and it doesn't have the geder as in kol terikula. It's miyushiv, even a small little piece of a rimain is enough to make it choshev. And that's why it's miyushiv, why the Rosh and Tosfos are saying that the Bavli is masupik, because it's not so simple. It's a whole different halacha by itself. It has different guidelines, and Meichetesi, the Bavli, agrees to this halacha. So we'd like to point out that to better understand this is there's a Hartzvi in Yuma, Claire's and other Achronim Claire, what the geder of Kazayas is. Is the sheer Kazayas in the Cheftza of the Isser is only with a Kazayas Shalim, or the sheer Kazayas is that B'Yesoida even a tiny bit is enough to be Aser. It's the whole sheer Kazayas is that without a Kazayas it's not Choshev. It's without that you need it to be Choshev. It's not that without that it's not a Cheftza di Surah. So it could be that's what these Achronim are saying. That's gufa the chilik. By birchas hanenin, you just need the shir kazayis have a chashivas. So that a barrier gives a chashivas. Masha'in gain by other halachas, you need the kazayis for the cheftzah di surah. So over there, the din kazayis is on a whole different level. Further on in Tosfos brings you a Yerushalmi. If someone eats something and makes a bracha, and before he eats it, it falls down, he has to go make another bracha. This is brought down in Shulchan Aruch, and the Ramah says that if it's daitoi, then you don't have to. It means it's daitoi on the other items in front of him that he doesn't have to make another bracha. So the Bir Halacha speaks out that's machlekes Rishonim, that the Shulchan Aruch is passing like Tosfos and other Rishonim, that even if he has all the fruit in front of him that he had in mind to be included in this bracha, since his main bracha is on what he's holding, and the rest is begreira, so therefore he loses his bracha. However, the Ramah holds, like the other shittas Rishonim, that as long as he had a mind for it, it's not a bracha levatala. It's an interesting discussion in the Achronim the Chuvas Binyan Olam has a discussion legabe the halacha of what happens in by Tkiyah Shofar. If someone makes a bracha on Tkiyah Shofar and this shofar gets ruined, or a middle of Tkiyah Shofar gets ruined, could he compare it to this Tosfos? And he says it's different than this Tosfos, because by food, the bracha is chal on the item that he's eating. However, by Tkiyah Shofar, the bracha is on the mitzvah. It's not on the shofar. And he says, furthermore, it's not on the shofar, it's on the coil. So he says he can't compare it to this Tosfos. There's a long discussion. Ayin Sham, the Har Tzvi over here has an interesting shaila. Har Tzvi says that Tosfos says at the end that if it falls down, you have to make Baruch Shem Kvoid Machus Olam Ved, and it's nothing to make Baruch Shem Kvoid Machus Olam Ved. He's bothered. What's the whole arichas in Tosfos? You should have to make Baruch Shem Kvoid Machus Olam Ved. Obviously, if it falls down and it's a bracha levatola, it's halacha all over. They have to make Baruch Shem Kvoid Machus Olam Ved. So he says over here, it's not the same geder of bracha levatola that you find all over. He says a chiddush that compares it to a tremendous chiddush that we find in the Ritva in Chulin Daf Kuvav. The Ritva says that if someone washes his hands and he has a mind to eat, and then he makes a bracha al netilas yadayim, and then he decides he doesn't want to eat, the Ritva says we don't force him to eat, and it's not considered a bracha levatolo that they made a bracha on his netilas yadayim, because at the time he washed, he had a mind to eat, and it's not considered bracha levatala. That's the chiddush of the Ritva in Chulin. So the Har Tzvi says that the same thing will pertain in our Tosfos. Since you had a mind to eat, and at the time you made a bracha, it was a proper bracha. It's not a bracha levatala. That Tosfos considers it a bracha levatala is like people are going to look at it like a bracha levatala, and he says it's a very serious, higher level of bracha levatala over here. By Motzi Shem Shemayim levatala is more concerning than your regular halacha of Maris Ayins. That's why you have to say Baruch Shem Kvoid Machus Olam Ved v'Ayin Sham b'Har Tzvi. Divi Har Tzvi tzarchian. First of all, you have to understand in the Ritva that says a chiddush that's not considered a bracha levatala when you wash your hands. You could say the chiddush in two ways. Either you could say it's a chiddush in bracha levatola, that since at the time you had a mind to do the mitzvah, it's not considered bracha levatola, or it's a chiddush in hilchos netilas yadayim, that since at the time you washed your hands, you had a mind to eat, that has a mitzvah in netilas yadayim, even though you didn't actually eat b'poyel. So if you learn the second side, then obviously it has nothing to do with this Tosfos. Har Tzvi is obviously learning it's a chiddush in hilchos bracha levatola. Another thing you have to understand is that it could be Birchas Hanenin and Birchas HaMitzvos is different. According to what we spoke out on Daf Lamed Hey, there's a chakira. How do you understand Birchas Hanenin? If Birchas Hanenin is a mitzvah levarich, or it's a din you can't have an o without a bracha. So if it's a din you can't have an o without a bracha, it's not a mitzvah that's mutal on you to make a bracha. So then you can't compare it to a Birchas HaMitzvos. Birchas HaMitzvos is a chayvas bracha. You did the chayvas bracha. That's why it's not considered a bracha levatola. But over here, the whole din is you can't eat without a bracha. So how much you didn't eat? So the bracha you made for the eating, l'chayr should be a bracha levatola. Tosfos Amud Beis has a discussion about the bracha on achilas matzah. If you make the bracha on achilas matzah and Birchas HaMoitzi on the same matzah, Tosfos says maybe it's chavilas, you're doing two mitzvahs at the same time, and he compares it to kiddush, that you make a kiddush and a Pur Piagofen. So you have to understand what is the Shaila in Tosfos. The Parla says that the Shaila in Tosfos is what's the Geder Birchas Hanenin. Is Birchas Hanenin a chayvas bracha? Then it's a mitzvah. It'll pass chavilas. If it's is din, you can't have it without a bracha, then it has no shaykhis to chavilas. Then if it says further that could be kiddush is different, the Pur Piagofen by kiddush is part of the mitzvah's kiddush, so therefore you can't compare it to Hamoitzi Lechem in the Oretz by Achilas Matzah.